Welcome all to a new topic in Nurse Winners. Let's aim, learn, and achieve together. Today we'll be dealing with the topic classification of neurons. Points that we are going to include in this video is what are neurons and structural and functional classification of neurons. So let's have a small introduction about what are neurons. So neurons are the structural and functional unit of a nervous system. When I say structural and functional unit, it represents the whole nervous system to function properly, or else a whole nervous system to be functional. It is very essential the neurons are to be functional. In case of any kind of alterations in the functions of a neuron, the whole nervous system function gets impaired. Similarly, when you look onto a nervous system, the whole nervous system is made up of millions of neurons. That is why it is said neurons are the structural and functional unit of nervous system. And the main basic function of this nervous system is they are responsible for transmitting certain messages. Those messages are called as nerve impulses. So these neurons will send certain messages and they are known as nerve impulses. So these nerve impulses move from one neuron to another neuron. So in the same way, the messages gets transmitted from one part of the body to another. That is a function of a neuron. When you look into this diagram, the first diagram represents the structure of a neuron. In that, the main parts of a neuron, which is very essential for us when we learn classification of neuron, it is first is parts of a neuron is cell body, axon, and dendrites. The rounded structure is called as cell body, whereas the branches that arises from the cell body is known as dendrites, and the stem-like structure is known as axons. These are the three main parts which we should know when we are about to learn classification of neurons. The second diagram is of a nerve impulse. I just wanted to show you how a nerve impulse happens. As we have learnt in the initial slides, nerve impulses are the messages that has been transmitted from one neuron to another neuron. So you can look into the diagram how the nerve impulses gets transmitted from one neuron to another neuron. The highlighted area represents the junction wherein the nerve impulses are transmitted from one neuron to another neuron. Going ahead with the actual topic of our video is classification of neurons. Basically, neurons are classified under two headings. First is structural and second is functional. So we'll start with structural classification of neurons. That is structural classification. It itself gives you a hint. That is the structure of a neuron. Any kind of changes in the structure of the neuron leads to a different type of a neuron. So the first classification of neuron, first structural classification of a neuron is unipolar neuron. Again I repeat, unipolar neuron. Let us split the word unipolar into two. Uni refers to single and pole. So here what you can see is from the cell body only a single process or else a single stem extends. So the round structure is the cell body, and from the cell body a single stem is arising. So we call it as a unipolar neuron. Whereas the second type is known as bipolar. Again let us split the word into two, bi plus polar. So bi means two. So there are two poles or else two processes that are extending from the cell body. When you look into the diagram, there is a rounded structure that is cell body and two stems are arising from it. So it is a bipolar neuron. So in this diagram you can see one is an axon and another is a dendrite. So there are two processes, hence we call it as a bipolar neuron. Third type is multipolar neuron. Again, let us split the word into two. Multi means many. Many poles are arising from the cell body. So have a look into the diagram. There is a round structure, cell body, and all around the cell body you can find many projections. So we say it is a multipolar neuron. So in this diagram there is only one axon and many dendrites that are arising from the cell body. And the most important point that we should know in this is, in a human body 99% of the neurons are multipolar in nature. They are multipolar, very important. So that is the characteristic of a multipolar neuron. And the last structural classification of neuron is pseudo-unipolar. Let us divide the term into three. Pseudo refers to false, uni refers to one pole. So what does it mean? This type of neuron shows the characteristic of both unipolar as well as bipolar. So when you look into the diagram, there is a cell body. From the cell body only one stem is arising, so it is unipolar, and then that single stem gets bifurcated into two, so we call it as a bipolar. So here there is both uni as well as bipolar. Hence these kind of neurons are called as pseudo-unipolar neurons. So we have four type of neurons. One is unipolar, second is bipolar, third is multipolar, and fourth is pseudo-unipolar neurons. These are the structural classification of neurons are functional classification of neurons. It means based upon the functions of the neurons, they are classified into three different types. First one is called as sensory neuron. The other name for sensory neuron is afferent. Afferent means towards. So sensory neuron usually carry the messages or else nerve impulses towards the central nervous system. For example, from the skin, muscles or different organs, it carries impulses towards the brain and spinal cord. That is why it is called as afferent neuron. And basically these sensory neurons are either unipolar or bipolar as well as multipolar in nature. The second type under functional classification is motor or efferent. First one was afferent, it means towards the central nervous system. Second is efferent. Efferent means away from the central nervous system. So what does it indicate? The nerve impulses are being carried from brain and spinal cord towards different parts of the body such as skin or organs, muscles, etc. So that is what is efferent neuron or else motor neuron, and basically they are usually multipolar. Afferent was unipolar, multipolar as well as bipolar. Efferent is multipolar. The third type is interneuron. Inter means in between. That is, the nerve impulses is being carried or else is being transmitted between one neuron to another neuron. So that junction, when they are transmitted from one neuron to another, that is what is called as the interneuron. So there are three types of functional classification of neurons: sensory or afferent, motor or efferent, and interneurons. So these are the classification of neurons. We had studied structural and functional classification. So let us see the points how to remember. Unipolar means one process, bipolar means two processes, multipolar many processes, afferent means towards the central nervous system, efferent away from the central nervous system, and inter indicates in between. So we have come towards the end of our topic. Thank you so much for listening to this topic. You can post whatever doubts you come across when you learn this topic in the comment box. At the same time, you can even post what all topics you would prefer nurse winners to simplify for you. You can go through the topic, share it among with your friends, and kindly let us know the improvement that what you would prefer us in our future videos. Thank you so much.